Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. In this week's show, we're going to recap Polaris 21, we're going to recap Finishers Kombat 3 and Midwest Finishers 9, as well as talk about Mikey Musumeci's upcoming match on 1FC. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, joint co-host
Miranda.
Hey, Miranda.
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Very good to be back from Vegas after ADCC. We are back to the normal show. If this is the first time listening to the podcast since that show, this is much more what the show is like. We have notes in front of us.
Yeah, we're not drinking while we've doing the show.
But so if you heard that last show and you thought, hey, they talked over each other a lot and all of the comments that we got, this is much more what a normal show is for the Grappling Rewind. Very much appreciate that you came back to listen to us again. Exciting
and
kind
for
of
you that
matches.
Followed us the entire time and you were like probably completely amazed by our drunkenness. It was fun.
It was a great show. We had a great time in Vegas. Very happy to sleep in my own bed. I have done an interview with Carlos Diaz, who's one of the judges and referees for ADCC. He talked about basically why. We asked a couple questions to basically recap some ADCC information, but really from the perspective of judging and refereeing. Carlos gave some insight and information on
like the AJ situation.
We actually talked about the off air, and was interesting ways to talk about and score that. But he had never really agreed with. There was no points for it, and I agreed as well. We talked about the Gordon situation where people were curious at ADCC why Gordon was given a call for action, and Carlos did a really excellent explanation of why Gordon would have been called for action in that position, and explained some of the ADCC kind of mentality and some of the thought process for the rules and the refereeing, and then also talked about kind of Duarte versus Craig Jones and why kind of received all of the negative penalties, and basically explained more of the ADCC rules and why that would occur, so that if you don't watch ADCC matches a ton because it's an event that historically comes around every couple of years, it's not a rule set most people are super familiar with, he shed a lot of light on how ADCC does things and how they're kind of different than other organizations and rule sets. So that interview will be up on the Grappling Rewind YouTube page. If you're hearing us on one of the podcast platforms, thank you very much. But we also have a YouTube page that a lot of those interviews and kind of secondary content gets posted. Also the Grappling Rewind Instagram at Grappling Rewind. If they're like really short form interviews like the one I did with Jacob Couch at ADCC, that would be posted on stuff like our Instagram. If it's not kind of longer form YouTube content, that's where that goes. So if you want to kind of follow us for what we do for coverage for jiu-jitsu, you can do it there. And I'm very excited. It was awesome to talk to Carlos and kind of for him to shed some of the light on ADCC, what he thought about it, and some of the controversial kind of moments for the reffing and judging. But that's enough for ADCC. If you want to hear us talk about ADCC, you can listen to the last 3 shows we did. They were a lot of fun, even though we got a little ahead of ourselves and talked over each other a bit. Sorry for that. The show shouldn't have as much of that. Let's see. Do we have any news this week? Any big news? Basically, we're finding out all of the injuries from ADCC.
Well, we're finding out injuries.
Big injury. We know
Nikki
that Nikki Ryan has a torn ACL or MCL.
I thought I read ACL.
Okay, I think it's an ACL. Unfortunately, he's out. Craig Jones gave a really good interview on the B Team Jiu-Jitsu page, on the B Team YouTube page that basically breaks down every single member of B Team and their performances for ADCC, what he thought about, kind of what the preparation was, talked about even like Kenta Iwamoto's match with JT Torres, because Kenta had been at B Team. I forgot that Kenta had also won 66 kilograms previous. I forgot that. I don't remember why I forgot that. But then, his match with JT, talked about his matches, Isaac's matches, talked about Nikki Ryan's matches, talked about a little bit with Gordon as well for his matches, and talked about Craig himself, his matches, and essentially why he didn't do the absolute, and kind of talked about the fatigue going into that. So we're finding out, there's athletes are putting out a bunch of information. Wagner's talking about his broken foot with Owen, in that match, and I've been loving all that content.
Yeah, and Mateus Diniz.
Oh yeah, Mateus was really sick for that.
He was sick prior to ADCC.
Yeah,
that's at least what I read into it.
And then Andre had the knee injury that he kind of talked about in his post-fight interview, and eventually, this is essentially like every other major, especially hockey. So I watched a lot of hockey kind of in college and growing up, and the the day after and the day after the day after the Stanley Cup Finals, you basically see all of the guys that have surgeries scheduled for like the following day.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what happened? Oh, torn shoulder, broken femur. You know, like, and you just find these lists of
and
injuries that guys never talk about
Yeah.
in the championship, and then after they have all of these injuries that come out to the public.
Plus, you don't want the world to know.
No.
You don't want to go into a match knowing that, something's
Hey, a
jacked
guy
up.
has something jacked up, he's going to target that.
Yeah.
And so it's again, as jiu-jitsu kind of gets more and more sports coverage, it's interesting to have the same parallel happen that we see in hockey come over to the jiu-jitsu space, and like, oh, here are all the injuries that guys were hiding leading up to the World Championships. And again, wish everyone the best recovery. We know Kendall now has
She's had a surgery.
she has had a surgery.
Yeah.
So wish her the best. But really, we're finding out about all the injuries that the athletes have, and
At least,
sicknesses and all that
hopefully,
stuff.
no one's gotten any kind of pink eye or any kind of
Man,
weird
if we can
infectious
avoid
stuff.
that again, it's more infectious diseases for everyone got super pink eye, and Craig Jones is still like partially a little blind from that.
Yeah.
Which is just, or it took him like a year or something like that. Haven't seen any of that yet, so I'm very happy about that. We also have some really fun matchups that are kind of getting brainstormed and announced. Ricardo Amendolia put a great post up on Instagram talking about like, hey, what matches didn't you see? Did you want to see? And I went through that entire thread and went, I didn't know I wanted that match, and I want to see that match now. There were some great matches. Like, I want to see Majid versus Kenta. Like, that's a match.
Yeah, that would be a
I want to
match.
see. There were a bunch of like other sleeper matches in that thread. So I
Well,
really
and
hope-
that's matches that Flo could probably do in the future.
and that
which
was
is
sort of
good.
what Ricardo was kind of hinting at of like, hey, what do you want to see on who's number one? I think that was actually the post itself. So the community has had a big time to brainstorm, and it's really been a fun week kind of digesting the rest of ADCC. But other than that, I don't think we have a ton of other news. It's really just been everyone like letting us know what was happening during ADCC. And then digesting
and that's about it.
everything and kind of thinking about new champions, thinking about that Lachlan got both Yuri and Cade in the first round.
Yeah.
Both champions, and that's that. So, do you want to start with Polaris first, or you want to start with one of the finisher events?
We'll start with Polaris first.
So let's start with Polaris. Do you want to start with the main event for this one?
Sure. We start with Jed Hugh versus Paul Craig.
The Bear Jew.
And that was an absolute match, and you could tell when they put him next to each other. Paul Craig's a big dude.
He's a big dude. I also I love the pre-fight stuff they do for Polaris because the pacing is really good. It feels
and they
like,
were in Sardinia.
Yes, in
which
Italy.
was like, no, Sardinia is its own country.
Yeah.
It's an island by itself in the Mediterranean. I mean, they're
Maine
very
botches geography.
I believe they're very
close.
close to, they're Mediterranean, so they're very close to Italian, but not Italian. But
This was the first time Polaris actually had an
It was
event
Grapple
outside
Island.
the UK, I think.
yeah, it's
that's
called
awesome.
Grapple Island. Yeah,
Beautiful scenery, and they did some post-fight. They just did some pre-fight interviews on like the steps of one of the very, very old buildings there, and it was great. I loved the vibe. It was awesome to see some of.
I was trying to figure out why there's so much graffiti. Like, is that whole island
That was
graffiti,
interesting. I thought
or
that
is it
was-
just like random graffiti, or did they find the graffiti and like went to it?
I wasn't sure. It added scene ambiance, but I appreciate it
Yeah.
because Paul Craig and Jed talked about like, yeah, this is an absolute match. Like, he's bigger. And like they both gave each other a lot of like props for their accomplishments in their various organizations.
Also, one of them
Thought that was
kissed
cool.
the other one in weigh-ins.
That was hilarious.
I forget
and
who.
Then they both
it was
just,
Paul Craig, right?
I think it was Paul Craig that
Yeah.
because they got really
And
close
they
to
both- yeah.
and they both just laughed.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's combat. That's the
Yeah.
combat sports that I like, where guys are like,
Yeah, somebody didn't just like
serious.
beat the shit out of the other one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a very, very famous I think in boxing and MMA where the guy just knocks the guy out of way.
Oh yeah, I mean,
but I appreciate that jiu-jitsu doesn't always have to be like that.
Yeah.
This match was really quick. I think under 30 seconds.
under 30 seconds.
Jed immediately scissor leg takedowns, and then Paul Craig goes, don't like that. Starts to kind of get out and kind of attack his own foot. Jed immediately cross-sides the leg and goes for, we had to watch it a bunch of times. The camera angle wasn't the best to really see the footlock finish. I think that this is like a modified Estima Lock is really what it looked like from kind of the cross-side straight ankle lock grip on the hand. Did you think it was something different, or it's like it's really like a toe hold Estima straight ankle variation?
I didn't really know what the variation was.
Yeah, some of the results are listing this straight ankle lock, but it looks like that Jed is pulling sideways on the ankle and the foot, kind of perpendicular to kind of where the foot sits, so that it would be like an Estima Lock. And there might actually be a name for this exact foot lock, and I'm not exactly sure, but very, very quickly you see Jed pull a ton of pressure into that, and Paul like tap. It didn't seem like, some people were saying online it looked like a panic tap. It looked like a quick tap, but it looked like a guy that
it didn't really look like a panic tap.
Yeah, it looked like, this sucks, this hurts, I'm going to tap because because what happens next is Jed opens up his chest and then bellies down or up to the other side of it and puts a ton more pressure into the bone, and it probably, injures Paul Craig. I doubt Paul Craig is making in a jiu-jitsu match what he makes in the UFC, so
I wonder,
best to not take an
So
injury.
it might not be, I wonder if they had the heel hook rule.
That was the question as well.
Because UFC fighters, you're not allowed to do heel hooks on.
They're not allowed to have heel hooks done to them. And so typically any match with UFC, with an active rostered UFC fighter, unless I think Paul Craig is still in the UFC.
From what I read, he was a UFC vet, so I don't know if he's active.
Oh, he might not be in the UFC anymore.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't follow as much UFC. I got to get Simon here to tell me if he's still on the roster. But yeah, UFC fighters in the UFC, when they take grappling matches, because of the Cub Swanson incident on UFC Fight Pass's Invitational, you can no longer do heel hooks to active UFC fighters because the injury time is so long for that. Oh,
yeah, totally.
So that's a recent rule. I think that came out in the Esparza versus Daniel Kelly match, which is the first match that we saw.
It was also, it was that card because it was the
Fury Grappling card.
The Brady versus Craig Jones match.
Yeah.
Because you saw Craig Jones kind of not have a lot to work with.
Yeah. So that was a very quick match. Again,
I was trying to see what they said it was on other places, but
they said it was. I think I pulled the results from Bloody Elbow, and they said it was a straight ankle lock. But
Estima Lock is what Tapology says.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me.
And that's because it looked like his toes were kind of buried, and it was kind of grabbing it and going.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me. Very quick match for Jed Hugh. Again, love to see submissions in the main event. Jed Hugh looks good as per usual. Not a whole lot else in the match. Very curious who they're going to put Jed up against next. He's got a real friendly style for Polaris, so I can't wait to see him again.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Next match.
We go to Michelle Nicolini versus Ashley Bendel.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember the last time we've covered Michelle on the show. If you don't know who Michelle Nicolini is, she's one of the most accomplished jiu-jitsu competitors.
I went back, and she hasn't competed in quite a while.
Yeah,
she did.
She did over to MMA.
Yeah,
she fought in 1FC. She, I think, was the champion in 1FC for a little bit.
Yeah, but jiu-jitsu wise, I haven't seen her in a while.
Yeah, I mean she's 40 now. So I think she's sort of slowed, especially now, slowed down competing. Watch me be completely wrong. And she competes at Worlds every year, Masters Worlds or something.
She probably does, but we'll check.
But I was actually really impressed with Ashley Bendel. We've seen Bendel before, I think on both Polaris and Grapple Fest. I could be incorrect about that.
No, we have seen her on both. Because the notes I have, because I found notes, or at least I came across them, was from Grapple Fest.
Yeah.
She went against Rosa Walsh in Grapple Fest. So she's been around for a while.
Michelle looked very good on the bottom. Really played the game that we're used to Nicolini playing. Shin, kind of shin like spider.
Yeah. Well, shin on shin and spider.
Shin on shin and spider guard.
Yeah. And she does like an elevator sweep where she comes in and kind of lifts with the shin on shin and pushes with the spider. But it's a sweep, but you kind of plop them over and come up. It's not really like over the head or like a balloon sweep. It's more of a you kind of push them over because they have nothing to base out with. And then you come up.
But Bendel did a really good job of addressing it. I think, did she get taken over with it once or no?
I don't think she got taken over with it at all. It was also no gi, and I've seen her do it a lot in gi because she has grips.
She has the grip. Nicolini can work with the grips a lot more effectively.
But she kept balanced. I know Nicolini came up a few times, but I don't think it was anything significant. And Nicolini went back to her butt as soon as she would come up.
There was a couple of moments in the match that Nicolini, I think once I thought, initially when I was watching, I was like, oh, she's going for a Gogo Plata. Yeah. And then we talked and it was like, no, it's that armbar she does.
Yeah.
Like, right. It's
she pulls the leg over. Armbar. Yeah, she pulls the leg over and in front of the face, almost like a
and then she sort of does it's almost like a violin arm lock to the side when she does actually get it.
It's a pretty nasty armbar. I've done it to people, and
I've comes out
injured
so
people
quickly on the side because it's one of those free open space arm locks where it's like there's nothing in front or behind the elbow really. It's open space.
It's a belly down.
Yeah,
you belly down on it when you actually get to it.
Nicolini does a really good job.
So it's not really the violin, because when she does the violin, she goes around the back and pulls the other arm.
Yeah, I kind of term any open space arm lock like that a violent arm lock. Anything where I don't have my hips behind it.
Okay.
Where it's like there's nothing behind the elbow really.
Yeah.
It's more of like I'm framing on the top and the bottom of the forearm or of the long bones of the arm.
Yeah.
Pulling it like that way versus like having my hips or something behind the elbow. Not able to get it. Again, Nicolini looks good here. You kind of went into a deep dive into her game after this match.
Yeah, because I just, first of all, I didn't realize she was the same age as me, which then Maine decided to call me old, which was great. And then after that, I decided, she's kind of the same proportion to me. So I was like, hey, what does this girl do?
Very
what does she do?
For
and
years,
the shin on the shin on chin spider thing I like just because it doesn't seem complicated.
Yeah,
it's pretty simple.
She doesn't rely as much on inversions as a lot of the women at similar weight classes.
I can invert, but it just looks simple. And then I also found when she overhooks, because I have this really bad habit of basically my first jiu-jitsu years, which I'm coming up on year 9. Just good times. That I realized that I have this bad habit of getting overhooks when I'm in guard, because I was always drilled to like immediately get into it. Yeah, but I don't do anything from it.
Oh, that's bad.
Like that's the problem. Like I go for a triangle. If I can't get a triangle, it's not like I can sit up at that point because I can't wrestle up because I don't have my underhook. So then I'm like getting out of my overhook. So anyway. Problem Miranda's. When she gets the overhook and she has control, she uses both of her hands.
Yeah, that was something I didn't pick up. You actually brought it up when you were covered in the pre-show, and it was really interesting. She uses the overhook hand. She used the overhook, and then she actually still continues to use the hand of the overhooked arm.
Yeah, sometimes she
you see very often too.
Sometimes she passes the far arm to the hand, and then holds it with that hand, which I thought was kind of ingenious.
It's interesting that you don't. I need to look out for it more. It's not something I see very often.
I think it's because when you think about it, like when you have an overhook, normally you keep your hand closest to you so they can't get their arm out. Right. But she somehow, I guess, drops her elbow maybe so that her elbow's like holding the arm.
She maintains the overhook control while still being able to use that hand. And it's just, I'm trying to think of other athletes that do it, but offhand, it's not a technique that especially in no-gi, have really seen used very much in the last few years that I can think of offhand. Yeah,
and she also, when she goes to shin on shin, sometimes she's with her leg behind, and she does this weird she circles her foot around, and as she circles her foot around, she picks up the leg.
Yeah.
So it's not just like a push up; it's like you circle and come up. Which I thought was interesting. So
really great to again. I love that she's still competing. Looks good versus Bendel. Wins the decision here.
Yeah.
Closer match. I think a lot of people were very, very impressed with Bendel.
Yeah.
To just see that you can take on Michelle Nicolini. That is very, very well.
It's an upping competition.
Yeah,
it definitely is.
And I think we're going to see big things from Bendel here in a couple of years. I think again why she's on the stage, why she's in the co-main event slot here. Polaris probably thinks the same thing as well, and that's those guys are pretty good matchmakers. So I'm curious to see where that goes. Anything else on that match?
Nope.
Next match we got Owen Livesley versus Josh Hinger. You saw an interview with Hinger.
The interview right before the match, Hinger was like, "I've been preparing for ADCC. I didn't prepare for this match at all," and I was like, "Oh, that's not good."
Hey, Josh, maybe you don't.
Josh, maybe you don't say that out loud.
But I mean, it is understandable. Like he's had ADCC in the forefront of his mind for 3 years. After medaling at 2019, that is what his focus has been on. Especially as Hinger gets a little older. He probably doesn't have 10 more years of competition at this level. This is his last, or his probably one of his last ADCCs. It would make sense that he would put all of his energy and preparation into that, and then a week later you're fighting on Polaris. You're probably going to be pretty prepped to face whoever with ADCC prep, which is funny because Owen comes into ADCC as a late replacement. Before the pre-show,
he's a late replacement at under 99.
Yeah.
Which he walks at 9. I think I heard an interview. He said 92, 93.
Yeah, so he's smaller for 99.
Yeah.
By a bit, and Hinger is historically always been 88.
Yeah.
We looked it up too. For some reason, I don't know why I thought he had been a lower weight class earlier.
Yeah.
But we fixed that in the pre-show.
No, he's 88, and Owen cut to 88 because there was a whole bit I stalk him a little bit, just a little bit. So yeah. But anyway, so Owen gets quite like 3 foot sweeps, I would say.
Yeah,
I think there's 3.
There was a couple of them. There was at least one that I remember vividly that like Hinger didn't seem, the first one initially.
Yeah.
Like Hinger didn't seem to really defend it that hard. Hinger was kind of like, okay, like I'll deal with you
because
from the
it's
guard.
sub only, so it doesn't really matter.
And also like Livesley, we know again, Livesley is obviously the bigger guy in this match. You can see when they stood next to each other. Owen is a guy like again, he was at under 99 a week ago in ADCC.
Yeah.
Took on Kynan Duarte. Hinger was at under 88. Like, they're separated by 11 kilograms in the weight class. Again, much closer, at the time of this match.
Yeah.
But Owen's still cutting some weight, and Hinger's probably not cutting as much weight to make this. Hinger goes down pretty quickly at the beginning, and seems to be kind of content to play from his back and his guard, and not fight Owen, who has a very, very good wrestling and judo and stand-up background. And it was an interesting tactical choice from Hinger, because we saw him wrestle so much with Ty and even in other matches in ADCC. I thought it was interesting that for some reason he was very happy to sort of accept bottom position versus Owen.
I mean, the only thing I could think of was, I don't know. Like, you would think Josh Hinger would be hunting guillotines. Yeah. But maybe he watched the matches and realized that maybe he doesn't. Because when you think about Owen's takedowns, most of his takedowns aren't like doubles. They're not like you're putting your head out there. They're like fireman carries,
why would you
which
do that
your head
versus
is.
Hinger? Like Hinger, if there's anyone that you probably don't, there's probably 6 people in jiu-jitsu that you do not want to shoot a blast double on. It's Hinger,
and I don't think I've seen
Mourinho,
him.
It's Craig.
And I mean, most of Owen's stand-up isn't really.
It's almost Greco.
Yeah,
I mean, he doesn't really have a Greco background, but it's
more Greco. It looks more Greco than it does. Yeah,
no-gi judo. A lot of his background is in actually no-gi judo.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. But again, tactically, we see Owen on top here, pressuring into Hinger for good chunks of the match.
Yeah, and then Hinger would get up, and then he kind of foot sweep Hinger, and it kind of went back and forth.
Never a pass secured. Never really a strong sub attempt.
Hinger grabbed his head a few times.
Yeah, he would grab his head, but it never seemed like Owen did the aggressive, like, ooh, I got to fight out of this. Owen was kind of like, I got to address this because Hinger's world class at this technique, but nothing that I have to, frantically look to escape. I just have to be vigilant with my positioning here and can I get a pass off this? No. Okay, I'm going to pull my head out now and kind of continue to work from this mid position to close range position. Yeah.
And Owen takes a split decision there. Yeah. Which I mean it was close. Makes sense.
I mean, he was on top. He was,
and the foot sweeps. I mean, that's the only thing that really. I mean, if you thought about what they were looking at. I mean,
even if Hinger's going to go down there,
he
still goes down from an action that Owen does. It was a close match. I talked about the show years ago. I've not mentioned it recently. I never like seeing a split decision because it means one ref had different criteria for what they were looking at. It means there's probably an issue there. But again, there were split decisions. It's a frequent thing. It exists in sports judging for a reason. But again, it speaks to kind of how close the match was, that at least one of the judges gave it to Hinger. Very close match. Interesting matchup after this.
It puts Owen at 3-0 for Polaris. Yeah. Which, so they put up a post on Instagram, and it was like, who does Owen get next? And who comes out of the woods but...
Pat Downey.
Yep. Just comes out.
And so we talked about this on the pre-show. It was like,
I talked about this with one of our co-hosts earlier today, and debated if Pat could what he thought of Pat. Just because he has a wrestling background, he'd understand it more than I would. But I still think Pat. I mean, Pat's a lot to worry about.
Yeah,
but
Pat's got a lot, and this is I was like, I'm not sure about the match, and then we talked, and I went. So here's kind of what I came up with and why I'm suddenly interested in this.
So, and this is the thing. Pat is with Fight Sports.
Yes.
Which is number one. Uh-huh. Number two, Pat has been behaving recently.
Yeah.
That we're aware of.
He's at Fight Sports still, and we haven't seen anything come out.
Yeah, when he
speaks to there being issues.
When he was at that Miami gym that they all he was there, I don't know.
There were some issues.
There was some stuff going on, but. Here, he seems like he's training. He seems like he's doing what he's supposed to be doing.
He fought in Bellator, has a super quick submission win in Bellator now.
Yeah. And his trials run wasn't bad.
No,
he got heel hooked. That was the only.
He got heel hooked by Ramos, who eventually went on to be in ADCC and had a really good match opening round with Nick Rodriguez. that.
Yeah.
Downey's is a guy that absolutely.
And Downey's been
level.
A world-class wrestler for a bazillion years.
He just got invited back for coaching, and we're not sure if that's real or not.
No, not coaching, for competing.
Oh, for competing. Sorry.
Yeah, in some kind of master, like I don't know enough about USA Wrestling to understand what they're doing. But he's still getting he's still in that world. And he still competes regularly. The only two losses we could think of, Jake Shields. There was a weird Jake Shields situation. Yeah, and that was.
Go watch that. I think it's on Fight TV now. It might actually be on Flow still, because that was on their old contract.
Yeah, and it's like a weird thing that happened between them. And then Pat has a loss, the trials loss. But besides that, he's looked pretty decent.
He has looked really good.
The problem is, like, who knows if Pat is still playing I'm a wrestler that knows a little bit of jiu-jitsu, or if he's going to actually bring in a jiu-jitsu game to his wrestling. My question is, for a guy like Owen, that matchup is we know Owen has kind of a European powerhouse for the judo and for the takedowns. Yeah. How does that play against a guy who's a collegiate wrestler and wants to like blast W and take you through, or fireman wants to throw you? Yeah, how many people has he suplexed on like Fight to Win when he was like suplexing people?
And from that body lock.
Subversive was when he like body locked that one guy, then like freaking chucked him.
So it's interesting, it's a stylistically really interesting matchup, because both guys will be very willing to engage in the takedowns in a way that most of their opponents are very unwilling to do.
Yeah, the question is, would they actually open up, or just be like a stalled match?
Would anybody be willing to play the bottom here if taken down? And that is sort of more of my question.
Or do they just get up and still try to throw the shit out of each other?
And it turns into that sort of match.
Them throwing, which I'd be completely fine watching them throw the shit out of each other too.
Could be really interesting. So that's a fun match for Owen potentially in the future. I actually really hope that does get made, because I think it would be very interesting to have two of those guys.
I think it would bring it would bring a lot of good attention too.
Yeah,
because Pat,
he's a character,
but the whole wrestling community still follows Pat.
Still watches him.
Yeah, watches Pat.
It would be interesting. It's a match I'm actually, after talking about it, going, yep, I would be interested in watching that. So those are the big matches on Polaris we want to talk about. A couple others that happened on the card. Hobson Mora defeated Tom Barlow. That was a decision. I haven't seen Hobson in
a while.
Quite a while. If you are new to the show, or you're new to jiu-jitsu, Hobson's an old school guy.
I think they said Marlowe also retired, and the only way he would come back was Hobson.
That's a match I would obviously want to see, a match versus Hobson Mora. So Hobson Mora, if you don't know, the meme of the guy getting knee barred and just stone-faced looking at the other guy, that is a match between Hobson Mora and Jeff Glover on like Submission X in like the mid 2000s, and Hobson Mora doesn't tap to that, and like it's
Hobson
good.
has a bunch of gyms up here too.
Yeah,
he's associated in like
here.
The northeast area.
But if you're unfamiliar with, like, because we probably haven't talked to him in the show in a couple of years, that very famous picture.
He's a smaller jiu-jitsu guy.
Yeah, he's closer up my size.
Yeah.
But yep, he had a match. He took that via decision. We also had Tom Halpin defeating Alessi Sanchetti via decision. We had Espen Mathisen defeating Luca and I'm looking behind me for a name.
Go with it.
Anna Carrera with a bow and arrow choke. And this is a really fun finish, because against a gi match, I do like the Polaris features gi matches. I think they actually had a couple of gi matches, especially
the first couple. I didn't watch. I truthfully did not watch the undercard, but the main event, the first two matches were key.
And so Espen finishes are really neat. He like bolos to the back, and then there's a defense from Luca, and then he gets the back, and then you see him fight in the collars, and he uses the same side collar as the leg he brings up. Yeah. Kind of an unconventional way that we see the bow and arrow finished occasionally.
Yeah, it's a modified bow and arrow. Mm-hmm. But
it was a very, very nice
It's a very tight bow and arrow when you get it. So.
And it was a very nice finish. Again, I love seeing submissions, especially gi submissions, showing that gi jiu-jitsu can be exciting. And Espen is particularly exciting, kind of much like his compatriot Tommy Langacker. So good to see him get that finish. Also, we had Alberto Bercasco defeating Shane Curtis via decision, and Miranda and I both bought the patches that Shane Curtis had on his gi.
You can watch the match to find out.
Curious what patch he
the
had.
patch is.
Big fans.
Yeah.
So we imported it from Europe.
Yep.
But that
we'll
was
see how long it takes.
We'll see how long it takes. We're here in like 6 months when we got our patches. You're like, oh, that show after ADCC.
And then you're gonna be like, what the hell are they talking about?
So that does it for Polaris 21. Again, I love that Polaris is branching out. I love the production value is phenomenal on Polaris.
It is.
I love their pacing. I love how they run it.
Camera angles were good.
Yeah.
They kept on moving around. You could see everything. You never had like a real block. The only thing that kind of annoyed me was when they, and this is just a stupid annoyance thing, is when everybody was coming in to like the matches, they come on like an angle that's, I guess, behind the crowd. So like all the crowd people are like wrenching their necks to look back at whoever's coming in. And that, for whatever reason, bothers me.
Yeah.
But
I wish that Who's Number One would kind of take a page out of how Polaris does some of their production with their like pre-fed interviews, where it's like between matches, they don't just fill with commentary, they fill with like either specific ads for the card or actually the interviews with the athletes, and like they talk about the matchup, and like they fill with more of that stuff and then walk them out. The pacing for Polaris is, I think, very, very good, and I think a lot of organizations could learn a lot from how Polaris does
I
it.
watched the main event live because it's a weird time. It came on like 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday.
I love UK cards for that reason.
Which is kind of fun. But it was a card that I really couldn't leave.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't where I got bored, because every once in a while I get bored on cards, and then I like walk around my house or I like do something, come back. But it's definitely one that keeps you moving the whole time.
Polaris pacing is good. I wish, again, organizations would take pages out of that. So where do you want to go next? Do you want to go to middle finishers, or are we going to go to Finishers Kombat?
Finishers Kombat 3.
Finishers Kombat 3. So
it's on Flow.
It's on Flow now, which is they're both on Flow, which is awesome. Polaris is on Fight Pass. I keep my Fight Pass subscription essentially for Quintet, for the EBIs when they do run those, and for Polaris.
Me too.
And
and Combat Jiu-Jitsu, because I like some.
Because you still like that.
I like some Combat
So one of those
Jiu-Jitsu.
happened this weekend, but there is no video until I think next week. So if you are a fan of Combat Jiu-Jitsu, you should expect
the
a
U.S.
video
qualifier. The Combat Jiu-Jitsu World U.S. Open qualifier was this weekend, along with the EBI 20 Absolutes. But it's not streamed, and it's not going to be on Fight Pass till next week. So doesn't make any sense.
So if you have Fight Pass, look out for that, and you enjoy those events. They're there. We may or may not talk about them next week, but it kind of just depends on what else
timing and what else
we have going on. So let's talk about do you want to run
Finishers
through the main
Kombat
events,
3.
or do you want to run through it a different way?
We're going to go, I guess, it's the main events, but they have they set up their card differently.
Yeah.
Because they put everything in the middle.
Yes.
So they do the whole, and you have a term for this, and I don't know what the term is. You called it something, because what's it called did it before?
Like dark matches.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Where you have like it.
You have your
Toro does the same thing.
Yeah, you have your main card you have your undercard that runs. You then typically will have your main event, your co-main, your main event slot, and then Bellator did this years ago. I think it's a wrestling.
And then they
do
a bunch of matches afterwards.
You do a bunch of local matches or like other things of interest after the main event, so that if your folks are there for pretty much just the main event, they can enjoy that, and they're not there for a 6 or 7 or however many hour long event, but you still have an opportunity to run additional matches and features if you have everything set up and you want to do that. So that's how this event runs.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the main event of the tournament, which is a match between Brittany Elkin and I can never get her name.
Sadai Durkee.
Yeah, a local woman to us.
Yeah,
we see her. I've watched
She's
her coach
TLI
for years
Virginia,
and years and years.
Like Northern Virginia.
Big Brothers.
I'd say. Big Brothers.
Yeah,
but I think she's TLI.
She's TLI.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, she took on Brittany Elkin for the 170-pound belt, and
Brittany gets done in regulation. I think this is one of the few matches that actually ends in regulation for either finisher event that we're going to cover today. For the main events, Brittany does a really good job controlling Sadai, and towards the end of the match passes the guard. Sadai has moments of her in herself, but Brittany towards the end of the match,
Brittany takes Sadai's back at one point, and that's when and gets like a crucifix, and then Sadai gets out and comes up on top, and then one of the commentators mentioned that Brittany does a wrestle up that she actually does in MMA all the time.
Yeah, the same one she did versus Clarissa Shields. They talked about. I think it was Jay that said that.
Yeah,
because Jay is just a wealth of knowledge and tape study. And if you remember the Shields fight, it's the exact same. She turns her hips out to the outside, gets behind, gets up, and she's able to start kind of the final sequence. Where she's able to mount and then get Saday's back.
Yeah.
And then she flattens Saday out.
Yeah.
And then,
it's a rear naked choke, but you're flat on your back when it's happening.
You can just tell that Brittany really imposes there and like slows the pace of the match down to grind.
Have you rolled with
Brittany
recently?
I've actually never rolled with Brittany ever.
Really?
No.
I rolled with her at Marcelo's, I guess the summer. So, like recently. I've rolled with her a few times. She's fun, but it's a lot.
Tank.
It's a lot to deal with, yeah.
Yep. I interviewed her. You can actually find the interview I did probably when she was a new brown belt at one of the early Fight to Wins in Baltimore when she was featured. When she was, I think, the brown belt champion still.
Okay.
For her weight class, or I think she had defended that a couple of times before. She's a black belt now. Today is still a brown belt, but if you do want to go find an old school Brittany Elkin interview prior to her fighting Clarissa or Kayla Harrison, you can find it on the Grappling Around YouTube page back in the archives. So that was a fun match. Brittany takes the 170-pound title.
Yep.
Moving on, we have
Max Hanson versus Gavin Corbe.
So there's some fun history here. Max Hanson actually won this title from DeAndre Corbe, Gavin's brother.
Yeah.
And
older brother.
Is it older?
I believe it's older.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we've watched Gavin locally. We watched both of the Corbe brothers for years, and for years DeAndre was the guy that was featured on more stuff, was kind of the front runner, and we're seeing Gavin really in the last 2 years really coming to his own.
We commentated Copa Virginia when he won that.
I've commentated him winning that, I think 3 times or 2 times
when
at
he
least.
beat the UFC heavyweight guy.
He beat Alexander Romanov.
Yeah.
So that kind of speaks to, and that was kind of a controversial match at Copa Virginia.
Yeah.
But it really speaks to how good Gavin Corbe has gotten. But he takes on Max Hanson, who has previously beaten DeAndre, and this goes all the way. This was an interesting match because this kind of highlighted one of the unique things about the Finishers rule set, which is guys are less interested in maintaining positional dominance unless you really think you can get a guy out of there quick. And both these guys, Max is very good, Gavin is very good. Both guys decided to really not try to impose positionally. They decided for the majority of the regulation match,
just attack the crap out of each other.
Just fight the legs. Yeah. And there's a lot of leg attacks. Gavin comes up a couple of times, but really both guys seem very content to pummel for the legs, to look for the leg positioning that they want, but neither guy's able to get it done. So this one goes into overtime.
It goes into round 2 of overtime.
Yeah.
When Max gets a rear naked choke in round 2
yep.
of overtime.
And then Gavin is unable to also choke out of that, and Max is able to take that. So, again, interesting tactics there for finishers. When there's not a point system in place, you can play it however you want to, and then you can go to overtime after.
Yeah, as long as you don't get mollywopped.
Yeah.
Which I've only really seen that ever happen once.
I've seen it happen, I think, twice.
Yeah. So the last event, they had one happen.
And a mollywop is basically and you kind of described it best last time, I think, is if you get overwhelmingly dominated in the regulation, it doesn't go to overtime. Yeah. Which I appreciate. And we've talked about for years there being a need for that in the
because some people just survive through their match and then they have all their gusto into overtime and the other person just beat the crap out of them the entire match. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Now you're given a back position and it's like, oh, you win. It's like, but I watched that first section of the match. Yeah. So I do appreciate that rule.
And they also have the fun rule that if you're in a sub when the time goes out for regulation, that you have to get out of that submission for the time to end.
I love that rule, actually. That's awesome. If it ends, it's like, hey, man, you're still in the armbar. Because
I believe that happened in both the Max Hanson match and the Vanessa Griffith match. Mm-hmm. Both situations where there was maybe 15, 20 seconds, but they actually had to escape from what they were in.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I think, honestly, that's a rule I would love to see implemented in other tournaments. I think that it should be a 30-second max. If you were, we've seen people in triangles for 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah. Well, after time runs out, you don't get 6 more minutes to try to finish the triangle. But I love the thought that, hey, time ends, they're in a sub, you're defending an armbar. the person has 30-second window.
Yeah.
If you're actively in the process of submitting someone to like work, it's only 30 seconds, and it gives the opportunity to like, you know, be very willing to fire up a hard sub attempt at the end of a match.
Yeah.
Potentially, because you'll have the option if you do get it and the referee deems it to be deep. Again, I am appreciative. I like kind of gaming of the rules like that. I do actually really like that rule for finishers. They can, again, not my favorite with the overtime, but they've continued to update and like change their rules over the years, and like that I think is the highlight of a good organizer, is like to make changes to your system and your rules to stay modern. So one more match I think we're going to talk about in this card.
It's Vanessa Griffith versus Bridget McEllis.
Yeah, we've covered Vanessa Griffith for years, and she looked.
We covered her on here, or we've just seen her in the area.
We've covered her. We've covered
you
her
guys
since she was a brown belt. She had the fight to win title.
Okay,
and we actually
'cause
saw
she
her
went
locally versus Maggie Grindotti. When Grindotti was still a purple belt for the brown belt title here locally at UMBC on Fight to Win, and that was one of the first matches we ever covered Grindotti on. Was that match, because Cyborg flew in, and they flew in. It's like, oh, Cyborg and Maggie are here.
Yeah.
Oh, Maggie's fighting for the brown belt title as a
purple belt,
fairly new purple belt, and Vanessa Griffith, you know, locally is very well known to us.
Yeah.
She's out of TLI.
TLI. Well,
she's at 88.
No, she's out of Crazy 88.
She's out of Laurel, which is like 25 minutes from us, and it's actually where I lived when I moved to Maryland.
I've been to that school a couple times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have too.
It's not a bad school.
No, it's a very, very nice facility. So Vanessa Griffith looked good here.
She did.
Very impressed.
Yeah, she controlled most of the match. She was playing guard, and she swept her at like the 5-minute mark, collected both of her legs, got on top, and got into a
nice sweep too.
Yeah, and got into an armbar, and that was the armbar that Bridget then had to get out of at the end of time. And then we go into overtime, and Vanessa wins in round 3 by an armbar.
Yeah, really, really deep armbar. Like you saw her kind of a really, really nice adjustment with the feet over the face. You could see kind of her pummeling the leg over, and like really good extension on the arm and drive up through the hips. I thought the sweep during regulation from Griffith was really neat, because she hooks the leg that you don't typically see hooked. She hooks the far leg in order to go through kind of like what I would describe as a modified like pendulum sweep from the bottom. It was it's something you see, but not something you see very often. So it was really cool to see that technique of like, oh, instead of grabbing the same side leg to do the pendulum sweep, you grab the opposite side leg standing, and then you do the pendulum sweep from there.
Yeah.
And it's just not a technique we see employed very often. So again, I appreciate a technique like that, but she takes that.
And that's for the 155 female belt.
Yep. So lots of belts on finishers this week. So moving on, Midwest finishers.
Yep, Midwest finishers.
Midwest finishers 9. Let's talk about, we had a 115-pound women's final, which is a whole tournament bracket, and we had a men's 135-pound.
145.
Was it 35 or 45?
45.
I got that wrong then. 45 pounds. Oh, that makes sense, because Ray DeLeon is not going to go to 35. I'm going to talk about the women's matches first, or the men's matches.
We'll go women's. And so the finals match was Alex Nugent from Standard. It's kind of weird that we keep on having all these like Maryland people.
Hey, we have
a hotbed of jiu-jitsu, but it's interesting.
It just makes me laugh at like all the people locally that we've competed against, or our teammates are competing against.
I've won against. Like I said,
a bunch of these folks.
I went against Sade Durkee. Like I went against her in blue belt in an absolute bracket. I've won against a couple of these girls, which is ridiculous.
It's just very funny. Like you realize that Maryland has a hotbed of talent,
which makes me think that I should go and do like Grappling Industries in like Arkansas or some random place.
Shout out to the Arkansas viewers, guys. Thanks a lot. We think that we might be better.
No, I don't think.
If you're from Arkansas,
I don't think Arkansas has a lot of jiu-jitsu.
They do.
It's kind of really.
We have
viewership there. Like Alabama. Like when I went to Alabama, they don't have a lot. They have a lot, but they don't. Not really.
Yeah.
Like it's not.
Look, we have DC.
I'm going to talk shit about Baltimore. Everybody in the area.
I'm going to cut out a bunch of stuff. So let's move on, so I don't have to. We're
if you're
in Maryland.
Yeah, we're out of the Baltimore area.
So we tend to run a lot of.
And
folks.
you can hate on Miranda. I'm the one that's saying all this shit.
Shoot us a DM. So moving on, This is actually a rematch, isn't it?
Yep. Alex Nugent versus Brittany Way. Brittany Way's from Gracie Tampa. Alex Nugent's from Standard.
This was a rematch on the last card?
Rematch from the August 26th card on Finishers.
Yeah, but that was a super fight. That wasn't a bracket. So this was
that was a super fight.
Yeah, this was a whole bracket. Alex Wynn is the champion. She got a bye in her first round, then hit 2 submissions in her next 2 rounds, going into the finals. So she was on.
Brittany subbed everybody coming up too.
Yeah.
So she went through all subs to her
brackets
finals.
like that where it's like you get submission. Yeah. And in the finals, you get 2 people that have submitted all the way through. Coming up, that is always good bracketing. I appreciate that Midwest Finishers, takes their bracketing seriously, and that's how we get. This was close.
Yeah. Well, Alex controlled Brittany's back for most of the match.
Yeah.
So, and then it went into overtime, and it was a ride time overtime for Alex. She dominated most of the match. And
she looked good. Again, when she retains the title, I think she took that with the last match. Was it Trinity Pun in the finals, or was it the quarters?
No, I think it was Trinity.
Yeah, that was a very fun match. Again, Alex has looked dominant.
And Alex is the 115 champion in both Finishers and Midwest Finishers.
Yeah.
So.
Again, look out for Alex being featured, I think, on more bigger things in the future.
Yeah,
I think she's been on Who's
brown
Number
belt
One.
Still. I believe. I don't think she's gotten black yet.
I don't remember. I should know that offhand.
Yeah,
I
think she's still a brown belt.
But look out for her. Very good game. Again, you don't become champion in multiple Finishers organizations.
No, and I think she was either a high. She wrestled.
She wrestles. She wrestles locally.
Yeah.
Not sure if she wrestles still.
Yeah.
But I know she wrestled until recently.
Yeah.
I think.
Because that was always an added bonus to her game.
It's like, oh, you can wrestle too. Like,
because it's one of those things. It's kind of like
Grace.
Yeah.
And Grace Gundrum.
Yeah.
10th Planet.
And
wrestled for years.
Well,
and years
because they play guard so much, you don't expect them to be able to stand up and then be able to wrestle and wrestle well.
Yeah.
You just don't expect that out of somebody, and so it's definitely a scary thing to have, but.
Yeah.
She takes on that, and then we go into the men's 145 bracket final, and that's Manny Vasquez versus Ray De Leon.
Ray De Leon. Stingray.
De Leon.
Ray. So we've covered Ray for years.
10th Planet versus 10th Planet.
Yep. I think Ray, I don't know if he still runs it, but he's the guy that founded 10th Planet Long Island.
Oh, okay.
And he founded it as a brown belt, maybe as a black belt, him and CC.
Okay.
And so Ray came up for years as either Ray, as Stingray, or Ray De Leon, and we'd always, Josh and I, early in the Grappling Rewind, like 2017 and 18, would have to always remember like that, and you can hear Josh yelling at the mic, "It's Ray," because he would come up very frequently at some only events because he was just heavy into the competition scene. It's awesome to see him, years later in the finals. Unfortunately, Manny Vasquez has a hell of a rear naked choke in overtime.
Within, I want to say it's 30 seconds.
I think 30 seconds.
Because they then give Ray 30 seconds to try to finish him in round 1.
And you can see from the camera angle, it's right in De Leon's face. And you can see Manny Vasquez has a super deep rear naked choke in, hand under, arm. And you see, like, everything gets squeezed very tight. Ray kind of goes to reach back and pull off, but he can't get out. And then in the overtime, he's unable. The overtime, when you have a short amount of time to work like that, is really tough. Ray, we kind of talked about in the pre-show, do you go for the arm or do you go for the neck when you have an overtime situation like this?
I think in a situation like that, you go for the arm, just because you got to pull it fast. Yeah. And I think with the back, you have to go through both the hands. Yeah. Because they know what they're getting themselves into. So you're going to do the prayer hands.
Yeah. Like you think about Isaac Michelle and Kyle Chambers.
Yeah.
It's like Chambers, if he knows he just has to ride it out, you have a lot of defensive options that don't involve you escaping. But with that 30-second time, you either get the rear naked choke on the first punch and you pull it through, or with the arm, you might have kind of a second shot on that. With the rear naked choke, late, like if someone only has 30 seconds, you probably won't get a second punch across and be able to finish someone. Again, we have seen it happen definitely in all the other times over the years.
It definitely has happened.
But Miranda, I think we've always kind of thought, if you have 30 seconds, you kind of want to go for the arm probably.
Yeah.
And that's historically what a lot of folks have done. We've seen changes in the meta for overtime over the years, but it was an interesting decision for Ray here to decide for back. because we know he has a great rear naked choke,
Yeah.
but with 30 seconds left, it's very hard versus a guy like Manny Vasquez. And Manny Vasquez is able to take the 145-pound champion. Did he take it or retain it?
I don't know that fact.
I don't remember offhand. I forget if he was the previous champion. I think that might have been. I just talked to Omar at ADCC, and I forget who the previous champion was. I'm looking at the guy's face. We covered it. He had a great run. I think versus one of the Tackets years ago. But regardless, Manny Vasquez takes that. I think that's all we have for recaps this week. Do we have anything else going on this week?
We had EBI in Combat Jiu-Jitsu, but
we don't have footage for that yet.
Yeah, that's not.
Submission
out.
Hunter Pro 78 is on Flow. Submission Hunter is an organization at Texas. Runs a very similar way that Fight to Win runs. We've historically not covered them a ton because we haven't had footage. But they are out there now, and if you want to watch that organization, they've been around for a long time. They are now on Flow, and so you can find them there if you do have a Flow subscription. Want to move into previews?
Yeah, I'm looking. Okay, so he got a. I can't figure out if he was the champion or not. He definitely did the last Midwest
Finishers. We've seen him before. I just don't remember if he was the champion prior or not.
Yeah.
Or if he was a 55 champion or 45 champion moving around.
I see where he's won by submission.
Right.
But I don't see what
round it was.
And I don't see if it was in fact that bracket or if it was a super fight on that bracket. So anyway, we will move on to 1FC preview.
I'm excited for this. So, full disclosure, this is Mikey Musumeci versus Kleber Sosa. There's other stuff on this card that looks awesome, and I'm going to watch 1FC.
I went through the see how many grappling matches. There's only like one other grappling match.
You know what it is?
It wasn't. It wasn't anybody that I was completely. It looked like a Dagestani guy.
Okay.
Which makes sense, and somebody else that I probably should know that I don't know. I'm going to say this name, and you're going to be like, "Oh, that's such and so."
Let me see the card.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Because I saw you looking at it earlier on the pre-show, and I didn't think to actually look at it.
That one, bottom corner.
I don't recognize the names offhand, but that's probably a me thing.
Yeah. It's Rodrigo Marcelo versus Ruslan Dasarian.
So if you know who those are, shoot me a DM and let me know why I'm ignorant, and I appreciate it, and I'll look them up. Let's talk about Mikey Musumeci versus Kleber Sosa.
Yeah.
I don't think this is for a belt, but no, this is for a belt, right?
Yes.
This is the first title fight for grappling for 1FC. I'm excited. So I talked to some guys at ADCC. I don't remember if I can talk about who it is or not, so I'm not going to.
About why he wasn't in 66?
No, we knew that because he had the appendix and he didn't have time to train for it. 1FC is signing some good people, and they are looking to build that league out. They are looking to put belts out.
This is the flyweight submission grappling world championship.
So that's 35 for 1FC. They are signing some good people. I think 1FC is going to start to put on some crazy good grappling matches this year. Or, sorry, in 2023.
They're paying money, too.
There's a couple of guys that are allegedly about to sign with one, and I think they're about to build out those divisions. And I talked to some folks, and I am excited with the guys that I talked to at ADCC for their signings with 1FC, because they will be people that will immediately be contenders in those divisions. So, Mikey Musumeci versus Kleber Sosa, they've met twice. Kleber is the last guy that Mikey. He has a win. He has a win over Kleber.
Yeah.
But they went 2017. They're 1-1, both in the gi. That's a long time.
Yeah. It is.
I don't think we've covered Kleber on the show in a number of years, but
he got fourth at the first Brazilian trials. He lost to Fabricio Andre.
Yeah, who inevitably won it, and then we saw him in the Absolute, and we saw him in the finals versus Baby Shark at under 66 this last weekend.
But that was the most recent Kleber Sousa we saw.
Kleber Sousa's very good. People aren't as familiar with him, but he's very good. He was a world ranked. I think he's a multiple time world medalist. Like, he's real good. 1-1 with Mikey Musumeci back in 2017. That alone makes me really interested in the match. It's a no-gi match. We know kind of what Mikey's going to do. We know he's going to sit, probably.
The Mikey Lock?
We know he's going to try for the Mikey Lock. I doubt he's able to get it on Corbe. Corbe's got really good submission defense. I think this will look like Mikey trying to play the game he played against Imanari.
Okay.
I think he either gets the full lock early, or
we get to hear the ref scream every single time there's a submission attempt.
I like the one. I like the ONE FC rule set. I like how they do it. It's exciting.
Yeah.
I love the production. Like the commentary gives us the backstory. The commentary is going to have some great kind of words of wisdom about why the match is interesting. And those guys in 2 minutes get me hype for a match. Like ONE FC produced, they're an MMA and grappling.
Their events are great because you go from Muay Thai with little gloves to Muay Thai with big gloves
to kickboxing
to MMA. And it just keeps on rotating through, and you don't really know what you're getting yourself into.
I love it.
And you're getting a lot of Asian talent that we just haven't been experienced.
I love ONE FC. Like I have. It's also like Friday afternoon, morning. So if I'm working from home, I get to work and like look up and go, "Oh, this is a good fight."
Yeah.
And take a break and maybe watch it. So, I love what ONE FC is doing. I'm happy. I'm again, Mikey Musumeci recently has looked essentially, unless your name's Gabriel Souza, unstoppable.
His diet, at least the diet that he explained to Joe Rogan, the fact that he looks the way he does with that diet blows my mind.
Dude, if you're drilling 10 hours a day or whatever.
I know.
Whatever he's training.
Fucking wild. You can eat all the carbs you want. It's ridiculous.
It reminds me of when I was young and a runner. Like you could eat whatever you want and as much pasta as you wanted. And that was when I was running long distances, that was a huge thing. You ate tons of pasta and like carbs because you were running lots and lots and lots of miles in a week, and your body could just deal with that. And I was, again, probably a little bigger than Mikey, but not that much in my like late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
You know, you can just do that if you maintain that crazy level of cardio.
Oh, we saw Tammy. Tammy won the ADCC Open.
Yep.
At I don't know what weight
you saw that. I only looked at my match.
Oh yeah, I forget you weren't with me like wandering around aimlessly.
Yeah, I just judged for.
Tammy won her division at the ADCC Open.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which division that was.
I think there are videos of all of those on Flow.
Yeah,
because I had to adjust one of the cameras when I.
You can go in because you can go in and watch my matches if you really choose to. Yeah. They're fun to watch. But she competed. I watched her because I remember saying it. And that's why I think I said it to you, but I guess I didn't say it to you. I said it to somebody. I was like, Tammy Musumeci is here. And they're like, no, she's not. And I'm like, she's on the podium right there. So she's definitely here. But I forget who I said that to. It was one of our other
I'm honestly, I want to. There's a couple
there.
of matches in the Open that I actually want to go back and watch because they were not matches that I was judging at the time, and there were matches that I would look over and I'm like, that's that guy or that's that guy. Like I've judged a bunch of Burchak's matches, Barrett Yoshida's match, some of the absolute matches for the invite.
Yeah.
I was unfortunate. I didn't see any of the women's open weight matches. But I really want to go back and watch
Brittany
that
tried to get me to get into the open weight bracket because technically I could have because I placed, but I didn't want to sit around that long.
That's reasonable.
And I probably would have died.
We got out about I got about 9 p.m. We got there at 8:30 in the morning, so it was a very long day, but it was a lot of fun. Again, talk about a little bit about that with Carlos Diaz. If you do want to go find the interview on the Grappling Around YouTube page with myself and Carlos discussing ADCC and the World Championships, it is out there. What are your plans for the week? Anything good?
I'm going to go to a Junie seminar on Friday.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Where's that?
Heart Jiu-Jitsu or Heart BJJ, like outside of Philly.
Okay.
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
The Acacia's got some great stuff.
Some of the Unity people are in Naga this weekend.
Okay.
So I guess he's coming down with them. I don't know. That's my only assumption of how they got Junie to come down. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody knows him. I don't know. But I saw the seminar and I was like, oh, I like Junie. I will learn from Junie.
Yeah. I remember following Junie as a purple belt because he won one of the Kasai qualifiers.
Yeah.
And then in Brown.
Him and our friend Ellis went against each other constantly.
Oh, yeah.
Like when I first started jiu-jitsu.
They're both 135ers.
Yeah. When I first started jiu-jitsu, our friend Ellis Kerdag used to go against Junie regularly all the time.
Yeah.
And it was always like these wild, constant movement matches where you're like, are they both really moving that fast? Like, it looks like it's
very,
in
very high
freaking
speed, guys.
Yeah, it's craziness. But
so that'd be awesome. That's
Yeah.
cool. I don't have shit this week except for just recovering from Vegas and relaxing. Got my father-in-law in town, so that'll be good to see him. He should get here in about 15 minutes.
yay!
So we got to adjourn the podcast, but looking forward to
Yeah.
that. Looking forward to seeing him, and just generally like cleaning the house up and everything from Vegas, getting some good training in, prepping a couple folks for competitions we're gonna go to, and then
Yep.
just back to training. So I'm looking forward to it. So
Back to the madness.
back to the madness. As always on the show, I'm your host Maine, I'm my co-host,
Miranda.
and we are the Grappling Rewind. You see on the mat, whatever it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Google+,
Until that shuts down.
we have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
Let us know.
reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.